So this is a group of scientists. You may recognize some of them. So many people see science as a series of infallible facts that were discovered by very smart people. And it's actually mostly true. But there's still a lot we need to figure out. I suggest you look up the history of genetics. It's quite fascinating and mind-blowing how some facts have actually evolved over time. This cartoon is a little shout out to Jorge Cham, who's most likely saved the mental health of many PhD students with his PhD comics. He also co-authored a book that specifically focuses on some of the things we still do not understand. And the bottom line is, as much as we know today, we still mostly have no idea. But that's okay, because scientists do thrive on the unknown. The less we know, the more we want to research. And scientists are persistent. This is a quote that was attributed to Thomas Edison that I came across in grad school. I have not failed, I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. And scientists sometimes enjoy tedious work. Marie Curie is reported to have described her work as getting paid to play. And although she had a little too much fun with radioactivity, the point is that she did enjoy the tedious work. So in order to be a good scientist, besides being smart, there are a number of qualities you need to have. So you need to be curious, comfortable being ignorant most of the time, have good attention to detail, be persistent, enjoy the discovery process, and like anything else, you need to have integrity. So the coming figure illustrates the ecosystem that's at play in the scientific process. You have funding agency, research institution, scientific journals that are the main driving force. The problem is that sometimes it makes it so that science is no longer the main focus of the scientist. There are two main issues that can be exacerbated. So one, it can actually dictate what to study, limiting innovation. And two, because reputation is everything, it can sometimes create an unhealthy competition environment. So the coming table was published in Nature, and it states that over 20% of the surveyed scientists at the time admitted to changing their experiments or results in response to pressure from a funding source. So yes, sometimes scientists can't feel pressured to sensationalize their findings or overpromise, which leads to paper retractions. But believe it or not, paper retractions are actually a good sign. That means we're able to track errors and admit mistakes. So reports of data falsification are not that common, but they do happen. And that's what happens when science is no longer the main focus, but money or reputation is. You end up with very juicy headlines and sometimes very tragic headlines. I mean, some stories are the stuff of a Lifetime movie or an episode of American Greed. This particular scientist was actually completely cleared from any direct misconduct, but the pressure was too great. Jerome Kagan, a Harvard psychology professor, states in one of his books that many scientists are actually more proud of the money they bring than their actual discoveries. So I like to point out that many scientists who've had a tremendous impact in the way we see the world today did not have million-dollar grants. In the 19th century, they were called gentlemen scientists, mostly because they were independently wealthy. Today, we have the entrepreneur scientist. So for example, Craig Venter was an NIH PhD scientist who came up with faster and cheaper ways to sequence DNA. He was criticized because his methods were a little sloppy, but he did get results, which pushed everyone else to step up their game, which led to the Human Genome Project being completed much sooner. So another way that we can give this little ecosystem some breathing room is through citizen science. So don't get me wrong, venture capitalist funded research and citizen science have their own issues. You've all heard of Theranos, and citizen science usually fails to meet accepted scientific standards. But we need to remember that Mendelian genetics and the discovery of jumping genes used to be considered pseudoscience for actually a long time, so we need to keep an open mind. So citizen science, if you don't know, is when the public is actually, at least in part, involved in the research. So it's a tremendous opportunity to not just talk about the scientific facts, but about the actual scientific process. And we could try to do that in a Socratic kind of way. So I would strongly encourage professional scientists to come down from the ivory tower, engage with the public, maybe get involved with citizen science, even just on an advisory basis. Take it as a challenge, because another smart person actually did say, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well. So what's the point of my talk? Well, there's still a lot we need to figure out. We need to keep our eyes on science and maybe be more inclusive in the process. And I also could have titled my talk, The Quest for Intellectual Freedom, or How to Research in Peace.